Concerning London 2012, if you're referring to the Olympic Games, I think the impact on tourism is probably a little bit too early to tell. I think everybody knew, or most people knew, that it was going to be highly problematic when it came to accommodating not the influx of visitors we had, but accommodating all the expectations people had for the event. But I think you'll find that at the end of the day, there wasn't a dramatic shortfall in demand for London during 2012. And I think that's much more of a testimony to the vibrancy of London and the demand for London than the impact of the Olympic Games. What impact it's had long-term on Britain as a destination, London as a destination, is probably too early to tell. We'll probably know in a year or two's time what the comparative performance of London is against such cities as Paris and other ones throughout Europe. Then it will become apparent. When it comes to hosting events such as the Commonwealth Games or smaller events, it's important to realise that these things are parties, and parties are great fun, but they have very little to do with tourism. They're one-off, they attract people who are one-off visitors, and they carry very little legacy benefit. And as long as you understand that the virtue of such events lies in the fun that you derive from them, rather than any lateral economic benefit or any weird idea that somehow this makes you desirable to an international audience, then you're fine. Enjoy them, but don't expect any benefit from them.
Does the UK count as part of Europe, as your brief?
Oh, I mean, the UK is definitely part of Europe, as my brief. It's one of the weaknesses of the UK, alas, is that so few people visit the UK as part of a European vacation. But the UK is part of Europe, and one of the weaknesses of Europe, from the point of view of selling Europe to Chinese visitors, is it's very difficult for them to come to the UK as part of a European tour. It makes Europe less attractive.
I mean, there's been talk recently about visa restrictions for Chinese visitors being relaxed to an extent. Is that going to benefit if it ever happens?
I think we've got to look very carefully and see what relaxation is taking place in these visa restrictions for Chinese visitors coming to the UK. I've seen very little detail on what's going to occur. If it's going to occur, fantastic, but at the moment the burdens placed on potential visitors to the UK are really onerous, and people are avoiding the United Kingdom as a result of it.
What do the Japanese like about coming to the UK, and how does their perception of the UK compare to how they perceive other destinations in Europe?
Well, I think the first thing to say is in the UK we speak English, and English is the European language which is spoken in Japan. Secondly, the Japanese have a huge enthusiasm for the culture of the UK, and it's remarkably undifferentiated in terms of high and low culture. I was in Jermyn Street the other day, and I asked, perhaps facetiously, if one of the people stocked any Huddersfield silk. I was told the only people asking for that are Japanese visitors. Japanese understand arcane pieces of UK culture and history, which even people in the UK have forgotten about. So there is an interesting, strong bond with Japan, which really we ought to be nurturing as strongly as we can.
And it would be impossible to have a conversation about the UK without talking about the weather. Does that really put people off from the rest of the world? Does it really deter visitors from coming to the UK?
The weather... The weather is always a factor in people's holiday decisions, but it tends not to determine their long-haul choice, particularly if in the UK particularly as in the UK we actually enjoy comparatively good weather, a temperate climate where you're very unlikely to be killed by the elements at any one time, nor are you likely to experience extreme discomfort. The UK does not throw at you an Indian monsoon, a Russian winter, or an Australian drought. You can survive here quite comfortably, quite pleasantly, 12 months of the year.